All right, so continuing with our Cubist project, we chose a theme, which is masks, and then we individually did brainstorming to think what came to mind, what do we have available that we could shoot that might relate to that theme. And then we just started doing a free-form sketch, building from the focal points we figured were most important. So in my case, I'm thinking of this Godzilla mask that my kids have and all the things it's around, the toys, the other types of masks. And I went home and I got those shots after sketching it this way. But this sketch is going to become incredibly important. And so if you have a sketch in your sketchbook, I want you now to take a photo of it. And you can do that with the screen using FaceTime and doing a screen grab with Command-Shift-4, or you can do it with your camera and then just import the picture. But for me, I'm going to do it, I'll do a little screen grab just to show you how that works. Command-Shift-4, then I drag the box around my sketch with my notes and everything. And that automatically saves it as a PNG, whoops, onto the desktop. So there's my sketch. The reason that is important is this sketch shows the format that we are working within. We're going to use this as a map to bring all of our exposures together. And then, of course, informed by our sketch and our brainstorming, the next step is to take a lot of exposures. So I went home, I set up the Godzilla mask, and sadly I waited a little too long, so there wasn't a lot of natural light coming out of the window. So I relied on artificial light where I could, and I used my flash a lot where I could to bring out some of the texture. And I just shot it up and down, finding connections, finding overlaps, and trying to play with the lighting and with the different kind of things around the Godzilla. I ended up shooting about 140 exposures. I will not end up using all of them, I'm sure. But the problem is to put all of those together in a way that reflects the intention of my sketch. And I want to reflect the intention of my sketch. This is my artistic vision that now I am using photography to achieve. I need to be able to use a lot of these photos all at once. And right now, each photo is about 647 kilobytes, which is not huge as a JPEG, because I downsampled my camera a little bit. And if I open them individually, and I look at their size, this will give me their resolution, they are basically set to print at 8 by 12 inches at 300 pixels per inch, which is bigger than I need them to be, right? So that gives me a lot of resolution to play with for these individual areas, but it's more than I need. So what we're going to learn how to do before we start putting things onto our sketch is we're going to use the computer, Photoshop in particular, to shrink these, to automate it for us, so I don't have to open all 140 and then change their image size. So instead, I just open one of them. And you want to make sure, if you want to follow along with me, that you put all of your exposures in one folder that's on your desktop or separate from your, I'll go ahead and put it on the desktop, separate from your SD card. You do not want to overwrite the photos that are already on your SD card. Okay, and then this is how we do it. Open up that folder on your desktop, open up that first exposure, and you open it with Photoshop. Now, programming in Photoshop, creating actions in Photoshop, not using someone else's actions, but creating our own is what we're going to do, is really simple. It's almost dangerously simple. Because all you do is you mark a cassette tape, and then you hit record, and then anything you do in Photoshop will get recorded to that action. And then you stop it, and then you can play it back. So what do I do first? I open Actions. I can go to Window, click on Actions. Then I'm going to go to this very top folder. Remember, the folders are like shelves of VHS cassettes, right? So the default actions folder, go ahead and open that shelf up. These are the same actions that come in every Photoshop. And you'll notice that I have a few here already. I can delete these. And they're called Carl Temp. And that's because they're temporary actions. They're not necessary. Just turning off permissions here. All right. So now to make a brand new action, it's just like making a new layer. I click on that default actions folder. So I say what shelf I want it to be on. And then I click on the little new post-it note, new action icon within that window. And I'm going to call this action my name and then temp. And then I might call it something like shrink, because this is going to shrink the image size. And then I hit record. Now hitting record is the important part here. I used to use VHS tapes and audio cassette tapes all the time and record them. As soon as you hit that, you'll see a little red button right here. That red button is lit. It's not even a button, it's a light. And so anything I do now in Photoshop will start to get recorded onto that cassette tape. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to image size. And I see that this is the original size, 8 by 12 inches, really closer to 9 by 13 inches by 300. At full resolution, it's 28.7 megabytes. So that's before JPEG compression. And that's really large. I want to get it more to like 3 megabytes. So there's a few ways I can do that. Remember that resolution is basically just a pixel grid. And I can reduce the pixel grid in two ways. I can reduce my overall resolution, or I can reduce my overall inches. So let's see, if I reduce my resolution to 72, which is a standard screen resolution, then that makes my image size only 622 pixels by 929, and that's only 1.65 megabytes, which is not a lot. It's way less than 28. Maybe that's a little too few. I want at least 2 megabytes. So what if I do 100? All right, so 100 resolution, that's a little bit better. Gets me down to about 319, 3.19 megabytes, and a nice even resolution, because some of these photos we might want to use larger than others. Now your camera might give you a really low resolution when you open it up, but a really big dimension. I know Canon cameras will give you something like 40 inches wide at 72 pixels per inch, whereas Nikons do more 8 by 10 inches by 300 pixels per inch. It doesn't matter how you change it as long as you are eventually changing your pixel dimensions. The reason I like to change resolution instead of height or width, ultimately though, is because if your camera shot portrait format like this, and I program in that I want all the heights to be 8 inches or 5 inches, then it will also make the height 5 inches for the landscape format photos. And so then those will be two different sizes. So I tend to, when I do shrink, I tend to control it through resolution. In order for it to actually change your resolution, you have to have resample checked. Otherwise, no matter what you type in resolution, for example, it will make it all match the exact same original pixel dimensions. So if I do 100, then it's 25 by 38 inches. But if I hit resample, and then I do, I should do that before. So this was 300 something. And then I do resample, and I put 100 in. Well then, sure enough, that's the amount I want. Between 2 and 3 megabytes. I should say between 2 and 5 megabytes. All right, so then I say OK. And sure enough, that image size with all of those settings got saved onto my action. This is an incredibly simple action. Next, I'm going to save it. So I say File, Save As. Now this is important because the problem with actions, the reason they're dangerous, is because I could overwrite my original image. And if I don't do it right, then I will shrink it maybe too much and not be able to get my original file. So when I say save as, I'm going to click as a copy. And it will add copy to the name, but I'm not writing anything in there, otherwise it will put that name into every file I use this action on. And instead of putting it onto my folder, my Godzilla mask exposures, I'm going to navigate it to the desktop. And the shortcut for that is Command D. And then I hit save. So I'm saving it as a copy to the desktop. And then what quality do I want? Maybe a 10. So I want these to be able to be processed quickly and still have good quality. Okay, now I have image size and save built into this action. The last thing I need to build into this action is close. So I say File, Close. And then it asks me, do I want to save changes to my original? And I do not want to save changes. Because remember, I already saved it as a copy somewhere else. So I say don't save changes. And now I have a 3-step action: image size, save, and close. And now I'm going to click the stop button next to the recording light to stop the process. Okay, now I can see that it worked for this one. I've got a copy on my desktop now. Its size is smaller by only 100 resolution. And I've got my original right here, which is unharmed, right? So I've got the original and the copy. Now I need to test my action, make sure it works. So I open up the next file, open with Photoshop. And I'm going to play this new VHS tape I just created, Carl Temp Shrink. So I select it and then I press play. It's going to go really fast. And then I see if it did what I needed it to do. I have a copy here. If I open that up and check its size, sure enough, it's a lower resolution. Did I hurt the original? No, the original is still full size at 300 resolution. All right, so now we know the action works. Now I could open each file and just play that action, and that speeds it up a little bit. But if I really want to speed it up, I'm going to do this. And I have 140 pictures, so I'm not messing around. I need to automate. I'm actually going to erase these two. And then I'm going to open up Photoshop. And I'm going to have my action selected. And then I go to File, Automate, Batch. And because I have that action selected, it will automatically put it into the play set. So the set is default actions. The action is Carl Temp Shrink. The source is going to be a folder. And I need to choose what folder. And it's my Godzilla Mask Exposures folder. I don't have to select each one. I just choose the folder. Okay, so it's going to pull everything from that folder. And then destination, none, because I have the destination already built into the action. I prefer to do that than to try to control where it outputs things here. This can go really wrong. All right, and I have the errors set to stop for errors. So if it ever has a problem, it will let me know before it does it. And now once I hit OK, Photoshop takes over. It will start opening them up, and I can just watch it go. And it will start making copies of them onto my desktop. And it can do it pretty fast. So this is a way that if you know you don't need high quality photos, probably the most common way is if you want to put your photos up to a website, right? You don't want to put your highest resolution photos on the website. This is how you can just easily shrink them as a batch. I'm going to pause the demo here.